Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from the Philadelphia law office of Obermeyer, the law firm. And we have a great lineup for guests for you on our show today. Matthew, will you please give us the run-through?
We sure do have a great show coming today. First, we're starting off with Brian Dainis, the founder and CEO of Curotec. Then we have Melissa Sherman, CEO of MOBILion Systems. John Maloney, managing partner of Wouch, Maloney and Company. And wrapping up with John Campbell, the president of Francis Kaufman Architects.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, and Matthew Shapiro Obermeyer for giving me a hand structuring the questions. And let's get to know Brian Dainis, founder and CEO of Curotech. Brian, what is Curotech? What are you guys doing?
Thanks, Herb. So we're a IT consulting company. We have two main areas that we focus, IT technical staffing and custom software and e-commerce development.
And tell me, where you're from originally and how many brothers and sisters?
Grew up in Exton, one younger brother.
And what was going on with mom and dad when you were a kid?
So my parents were divorced when I was around the age of 3, grew up with a single mom, and that's about the short of it.
So you grew up with a single mom, and tell me a little bit what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old with this electronics.
Yeah, so, I loved figuring stuff out at that age, taking apart TVs, computers, digital audio equipment, anything I could get my hands on.
And didn't you tell us earlier in the green room that you were selling some stuff on through the web? What was that about?
Yeah, absolutely. So when eBay hit the scene there, I took advantage, and a lot of the stuff that speakers I was building, computers I was building, and anything that.
What do you mean you were building speakers? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so bookshelf speakers, studio monitor speakers. I would build the cabinets, construct the crossovers, and put together the drivers.
So when you say you were building so you were doing thorough. You were figuring out what speakers to put in the speakers. You were building the cabinets, and you were also figuring out the electronics, what capacitors and what resistors and inductors to put into the crossover. You were figuring out the whole system, weren't you?
Yep.
And you figured out how to make money taking all the different elements and tuning them all together. It's pretty creative.
It was a lot of fun as well.
What does figuring out the complete system have to do with what you're doing nowadays?
Well, you could liken it to an IT system in a business where there's a lot of moving parts. There's multiple things that need to be accounted for, and
you're able to look at the complete picture.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. And let's see, Shannon, why don't you take them from here?
Brian, in the green room, you mentioned you were into music and in a band. What instrument did you play?
I've played a bunch. Vocals has always been my main focus, but I've done guitar, bass, keyboard, drums.
And did you take lessons to learn all of those?
For guitar, I did it for a little while.
What about the other instruments you just mentioned?
Self-taught. I've had a ton of vocal coaches over the years, but that came later in life after 14.
Self-taught, what do you mean? How so?
Picked it up and dove in.
And what did teaching yourself to play these instruments teach you in the long run that you still carry with you today?
I think being able to figure stuff out that you don't know the answer to, or even the rhythm or the feel of something, that is critical in a senior leadership position for a company, because you're going to be faced with challenges that you haven't seen before, at every stage of your company.
What are you talking about, the rhythm or the feel? That sounds like touchy-feely kinds of stuff.
Well, in a company, you have things that are quantifiable, but you have a lot of things that are qualitative as well. Things like your culture of your people, the personalities in a room, whether it's a sales situation or a delivery situation, and that's. There's a rhythm.
All right, Matthew?
So you told us growing up you also played some hockey, right?
Yeah, I did.
So what position did you play?
Left wing and center.
And what's the role of a left wing and a center?
Score goals.
What's the key to scoring goals? How do you score goals?
Confidence, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of planning, but, just confidence and execution in the moment.
And what's that got to do with what you're doing today?
It's in a fast-paced environment. Where we work in the IT world, it's things are changing so quickly. So being able to keep up with trends, make quick decisions, adapt to change, being confident through that, it's critical.
Do you have a most memorable game from your hockey career?
I did. I'll toot my own horn a little bit. So we had a tournament where we lost, I think it was like 5 or 6 to nothing. With this first team, we went and beat every other team, and it was us against that first team in the final game. Winner takes the tournament, and we won 4-3, and I scored a hat trick in that game.
How'd that make you feel?
It was amazing.
Was your mom there watching?
She was, yeah.
Did your mom make it to all your games?
Yeah. She made it to all of them.
Single divorced mom made it to games. Probably a lot of practices
she
too,
did,
right?
Yeah, she'll tell you it was a full-time hockey mom job.
How did that make you feel having your mom there all the time?
Really supported.
And what does that have to do? What did you learn from that you bring with you to your job today?
Well, I think, one of our core values is that our employees are critical. I think, being able to help our team feel supported and, feel that we have their back is, it's what makes them get up every day and do what they do.
Let me ask you, I want to change topics totally on you here. You just said you were selling stuff on eBay. That had to be like the beginning of eBay, right?
It was early, yeah.
How did you figure, were you buying first or selling first?
Selling.
And what made you figure out you could sell on eBay? How did you figure that out?
So, funny story, actually. I was too young to have a bank account or a PayPal account back then, so I actually set up an account in my name with my mom's social security number. She somehow decided to let me do that. But I just kind of, figured it out, set it up, and just got started doing it.
So you had to develop the model to figure out how to take the pictures and do the descriptions, right? Because there weren't templates yet.
Got one of those really old, beat up digital cameras that took grainy pictures. You could hardly tell what you were taking a picture of.
What's all that stuff have to do with what you're doing nowadays?
It was exciting for me back then. It was exciting to see that I could take something, put it out there, and then see money come in the door. And I would say that excitement and seeing that you can make your own path, you can do your own thing, you can put something together that has value, put it out in the world, and see value come back in return. That's part of, I think, what motivated me to get into what I do today.
Shannon, what else are you thinking?
So I'm just curious, you grew up with your mom, a single mom, and your brother. Was there a male influence that had an impact on your life?
There was always, several. I had an electronics teacher that Mr. McAdams, who was a huge influence on me. I had a neighbor that, helped get me into some of this, electronics and speaker stuff. Hockey coaches over the years, so there's been a number. It sounds like you really appreciate guidance and feedback from people. Sure. Yeah, it was when I was younger, soaking up any knowledge I could was, anytime I had somebody that was willing to teach me their technical chops, I would soak it up. And how does that relate to the way you're leading your team today? It's, again, back to our core values. One of our core values is experts in our craft. So, always soaking up as much knowledge as we can, being able to understand, complicated, changing systems, being able to understand how that impacts real world business, applying these technical systems to business impact. That's, to me, the team, myself and our entire team need to be able to soak up knowledge on a consistent basis and then apply that knowledge in a practical sense. So if you're so good at soaking up knowledge and always liked it so much, I assume school was a breeze for you, right? I didn't always do the best in school. And you told us earlier that the school made an adjustment to you to help you like school. What'd they do? Yeah, so I did in high school. I did the 4 core classes, whatever, English, math, history, whatever they were, and then what else? And then I had 4 study halls they gave me that I just, they just gave me a passing grade on those 4 study halls, and my job was I had an email inbox, and teachers would send technical issues to the email inbox, so I'd go around, push around a cart, pick up VCRs and overhead projectors and computers, and then take them back to the electronics lab and fix them, and then go back and ship them back to the classroom. And it wasn't just you, was it? No, I had a few helpers working with me as well. So how many helpers did you have? On and off. I did this from middle of 9th grade through senior year. So on and off, I don't know. I probably had a handful, 5 or 6 over the years.
So it sounds like you were already running your business back when you were in school.
Something like that. I wish I got paid for it, but
You were organizing.
I got paid in good grades.
you were organizing the other kids. You had to get their cooperation. You were handling the help desk. It sounds like the teachers wouldn't have continued to ask you questions unless you were responsible. It really does sound like you were running a business, except there was no revenue coming in. Do you see a parallel between that and what you're doing nowadays?
I've thought about it before. It absolutely is. I would say an early operation that could be looked at as similar to a business.
Yeah, it probably gave you comfort that you could do it. What's the website address of this organization known as Curotech?
Curotec. It's Curotec.com.
We've been speaking with Brian Dainis, founder and CEO of Curotech, here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment right after this business spotlight. And your name and organization is?
Shelley Castorino, Wouch, Maloney.
And what's your role and what do you do in that organization?
I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Development. I'm in charge of image, brand, and making certain that we find the correct clients that match our skill sets.
Where'd this come from in you?
I grew up in a small town, and we knew everybody, so every time I met somebody new, I was excited to find out why they were there, what they needed, how could we help.
And what's that have to do with what you're doing nowadays? I'm trying to figure the connection there.
When we go out and network and meet clients, I ask what they need in accounting services or tax and how we can find our services that match what they need.
So it sounds like you're really built for your gig. It sounds like it really fills you, what you're doing. Does it feel like work?
No, I really enjoy meeting people every day. That's what I do, and putting people together.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like the natural connector. What's your website address?
It is wm-cpa.com.
Let me have that one more time.
wm-cpa.com.
And this has been your Business Spotlight. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Melissa Sherman, who's CEO of MOBILion Systems. Melissa, what is MOBILion Systems? What are you guys doing?
We develop instruments to better predict, diagnose, and treat disease.
That sounds pretty scientific and complicated. Where are you from originally?
Port Washington, Wisconsin.
And how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
I am the youngest of 3, 1 brother, 1 sister.
And how young were you when this science showed up in your blood?
I've always been, I guess, interested in science in terms of it came easy to me. I'm not artistic at all, so math and science came very easy, and I found it was the way to figure things out. So I was pretty curious on how things worked, and science provided those answers.
How young were you when you started making money?
I was a babysitter. I was about 11 or 12 when I started babysitting.
And what did you do different than all the other babysitters?
When I babysat, I was good. The parents were happy. I took care of the kids, but I also vacuumed and made sure all the dishes were put away and would cook meals and did a lot of other housekeeping things.
So the fact that you were reasonably thorough and diligent, did you get paid extra money for doing that stuff?
I don't know if I got paid extra.
Why would you bother doing it
about
then?
the money? But I was proud, and I mean the families always called me first. The one family I babysat for called me because they were always wowed and happy when they came home.
So your nature is to do things thorough and complete, and it wasn't necessarily for the money. But when you get a job assigned, you want to do a good job with it.
Right.
What's that have to do with your role nowadays?
Well, I love my role, and probably why I am where I am is because I have the unique opportunity to look across my business very, very broadly and then execute on specific things to make it successful.
So you were looking at the big picture as a babysitter, not just let me take care of the kids or turn on the TV. It's like, how can I do a complete job here?
Right.
Okay. Shannon?
Melissa, tell us a little bit about your mom and what she was like when you were growing up.
So my mom is a nurse. She was very sweet and kind, and I was proud of her because we grew up in a small town, and I would get people on the street or people in the store talking about how great of a nurse my mom was.
And how did that make you feel?
I was proud and wanted to be like her in that way in terms of, I guess, making people happy and satisfied.
And where do you see that come out today?
So in terms of well, it's funny because at work I have 2 nicknames. So one nickname is Mama Bear and the other nickname is the Shermanator. So I think the Mama Bear part came out is reflective of my mom and how she made sure she took care of people. She did a very thorough job. She went above and beyond. I would hear stories from the hospital about how she went above and beyond to deliver outside the scope of her role.
And in the green room, you actually mentioned that you had a near-death experience and you ended up in the same hospital that your mom worked at. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. So I was nearly electrocuted when I was very young, and when I almost died, and they really couldn't figure out how I didn't die from the electric shock that I experienced. And when we lived in a very small town, and the ambulance took me to the one hospital we had, and my mom happened to be in the hospital for a back injury at the time, and I ended up in her hospital room.
That near-death experience, what did you take from that?
I guess I went by with a flash of an eye, and I guess now I make decisions very rapidly, or I'm not afraid to make decisions rapidly. I don't wait. I move pretty quick.
And how does that help you be a better CEO today?
Yeah, so I don't wait. So I mean, I don't make careless decisions. I am a scientist by training, so I have to think about the inputs and the data. But if I don't have all the facts, I don't hesitate to make the decision that I need to make.
Melissa, tell us about your dad.
So my dad is kind of the yin-yang, or the opposite of my mom. He was very temperamental, not the most sensitive. And so probably the Shermanator part of me comes from him in terms of if you just stood up to him or didn't let him steamroller you, he would back down. So I pretty much grew up standing up to my dad, and I think it pretty much taught me not to take crap from anybody and just stand up for what I believed in.
And when we think about that kind of balance in your life, I guess you said math and science always came easy and you were good at it. So I guess like in school, were you a little bit of a nerd and everybody thought you were this little smarty pants?
No, not exactly. I was a little bit of a troublemaker, and because school came easy, I found other things to keep me occupied that maybe weren't the most respectful to teachers.
So you said that people found out when you graduated that you were
so
really...
when I graduated, they published in the local paper the ranking of the class, the graduating class, and one of my friend's mothers came up to me and said, "I didn't know you were smart," after knowing her since 5th grade.
And so I'm really curious about the way you're kind of balancing Mama Bear and the Shermanator and being smart and also being able to have fun. How does that balance of life come out in the way you run the company?
Yeah, well, I like to say we have an amazingly fun place to work. So we work really hard. I'm very demanding. I expect the best. We need to be the best at what we do and the subject matter experts. But at the same time, life is life, and we have a lot of fun while we do it.
What do you mean we need to be the best at what we do? What are you talking about there?
I guess I say in part of our cultural manifesto is, you don't leave at the end of the day until you're proud of what you've done. And so you work hard, you being less than best and doing the best that you absolutely can. It's just non-negotiable.
That's both your mom as well as the babysitting.
Right.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's both your mom and the babysitting? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was at both at the same time, going above and beyond, doing more than what is expected, but being nice and sincere and not forgetting about the people aspect along the way.
So when you mentioned that in school sometimes you cause a little bit of trouble, is that because you weren't fully engaged and you had a lot of extra energy, intellectual curiosity and energy that wasn't being absorbed?
I think my teachers would probably say I was just very talkative and like to talk to people, and I didn't really need the teaching that was going on in the class, so I just decided to talk to people along the way.
Yeah, you weren't engaged. So the stability of yours to really enjoy science and math, yet people, isn't that who you are nowadays as a CEO of this organization?
Oh, well, we're all about helping people. I mean, we build very complicated instruments that a lot of people don't understand the inner workings, but our ultimate goal is to heal patients, develop better drugs, and really make a positive impact on healthcare.
So your nature, you really love analyzation.
I am a scientist by training.
What do you mean by that? Tell us more.
Well, I gather facts. I like to know how things work. Even in approaching a people problem, I like to analyze the situation. So it's not always my opinion. It's also the opinion of the person sitting on the other side of the table. So when we deal with customers, clients, collaborators, the world is not only according to my view or my company's view. You always have to put yourself in who's ever sitting across the table from you and what their view of the situation is.
So you know in an instant when you're talking with somebody, as opposed to most people that need to understand, you sort of get it in an instant, which is what was going on with you as a kid in school. You know, when the teacher would start talking about the subject, you would sort of like implicitly understand stuff and then get bored.
Exactly.
And basically, the boredom is where you started, because you're intellectually curious, you would get into a little bit of trouble here or there or cause some issues.
Yes.
Who's got the next question?
In the green room, you mentioned you have 2 kids. What have you learned from them that has affected the way you lead your team today?
Yeah, immense amounts of patience, and I would say empathy, and I've probably gotten a lot better at understanding a different side of the story. So my kids have very different personalities, and my son in particular is very differently wired than me. And so understanding it's not always how you think, and you have to always think about how other people think, which is not the same as you.
And have your kids helped you understand how to build a business?
Absolutely. Building a business is all about interacting with people and trying to motivate people to be the best that they can be. And that's what, as parents, that's what we do. So, yes, I think I'm probably much better at running a business.
So you see a similarity between being a mom and being the CEO?
Absolutely.
What's the similarity?
You are always trying to take people that are unlike you and bring the best out of them, make them be the best that they can be. And whether it's your kids or your employees, I think it's the same.
Wow, I guess that really absorbs your analytical abilities, too. You know, but I can understand the patience piece as well. What's the website address of MOBILion Systems?
It's MOBILion Systems.com.
We've been speaking with Melissa Sherman, CEO of MOBILion Systems, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, it's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment, right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce John Maloney, who's managing partner of Wouch, Maloney & Company. John, what is Wouch, Maloney & Company?
We're a CPA firm. We provide tax and accounting and business advisory services to our clients.
Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Northeast Philadelphia.
How many brothers and sisters?
I am 3 out of 4.
And what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old? What were you up to?
I was at the playground playing, which was a block away, playing with my friends.
At the playground, was that like, did you grow up like in a row house, or did you grow up in a fancy dancy neighborhood? What was your neighborhood like?
No, we grew up in a twin. The neighborhood was a very close-knit and dense neighborhood.
And was there a park nearby, or was it the playground that was nearby?
It was a playground about a block away.
Okay. Shannon?
John, what sports were you involved in as a kid?
Basketball and baseball.
And what was your favorite?
Basketball.
Why?
I guess I like the team aspect of it. It was a little faster moving, so I kind of like that more, a little bit more strategy.
And what was your role on the team?
I typically played point guard or shooting guard. And
what did you bring to the team in that role?
I was vocal, kind of directing people on a court, what to do, what not to do, so I didn't have a problem with that.
And how does that relate to what you're doing today?
It's very similar. What I do today, I instruct and listen to people in my own office and lead them in a way that they need to be led, depending on the circumstances.
John, tell us about your dad.
My dad was interesting. He was very disciplined, very old school. You couldn't get away with a lot of stuff with him. No nonsense.
And was he really supportive? Did he always tell you, great job? Was he that kind of dad?
No, quite the opposite. He gave me the indication that anything I did wasn't good enough.
Isn't that why you told me you were hanging out at the playground because you wanted to try to stay away from him sometimes?
Yes, that was one of them. Kind of disconnect from that environment.
And what about your mom?
Mom was complete opposite. Very caring. She was very religious, so it taught me a lot.
And which one of them are you more like?
I am more like my mother, but certainly have traits from my father.
What do you bring from each of them to work every day with you?
From my father, the discipline, I bring that, certainly. I want perfection. I hoped I would get perfection. From my mother, it's more the caring and motivational aspect of things and conveying faith in other people and in other staff that they can do good and do better.
How old is this accounting firm?
Our accounting firm is 35 years.
And didn't you co-found this firm?
Yes.
All right, so your nature is, you just want to keep on building, improving yourself, don't you?
Yes. I learned from a lot of good people in the past. One, my partner, who's a couple years older than me.
And how'd you learn how to partner? How young were you when you learned how to partner?
Learning how to partner? Well, fortunately, he was very similar to myself, had very similar...
No, where'd you learn how to partner? Was that on the playground?
On the playground, and really through my mother and her coaching about the various aspects of life.
We have with us today Shelley Castorino, who's your Director of Marketing, who just recently began working with the firm. Shelley, I was wondering, what's John's reputation in the firm?
He's very nurturing. He isn't afraid to show people how to do things the right way, and he really does the best to find the best in each other and improve upon that.
Why'd you come to work with this firm? Why this firm?
When I met with a lot of the C-suite, I also got to speak to some managers, and I was told when I asked point blank, what are your targets? I was impressed with how they were able to tell me exactly what they were going for.
So the culture of the organization is pretty clear, and I guess it sounds to me like there's a real camaraderie there in the organization.
There is. Everybody is very helpful. They aren't afraid to ask questions, to ask for information, ask for help, and also pitch in.
So it sounds to me like John's, recreating his basketball team with this accounting firm. We also have with us Ryan Maloney, who's John's son. Ryan, what am I missing? What are we missing about your dad? What else should we be bringing out here?
Dad, how do you incorporate everything you've learned in your past, and how do you incorporate that in raising children as a father?
Yeah, what's the similarity between running this accounting firm and being a dad?
They're somewhat similar. I mean, children are a little bit different than staff, but the same principles of caring and to motivate people and have faith in them, and give them the faith in themselves that they can actually get better and try to educate them.
John, what have you learned from Ryan, your son, that's helped you build Wouch, Maloney and Company, which is a real solid, old-fashioned accounting firm, even though you're doing a lot of newfangled things? What did you learn from Ryan to help you build this business?
Well, from most children, you learn patience, and then you actually get to reflect and see how your children grow and how they develop. And it's interesting. That's very parallel, parallel to your staff when they, in fact, mature and they develop and they learn things and they can use those tools and get better, and that's very satisfying.
So you really enjoy developing people, whether it's staff or your own son.
Yes. As you get a little bit older, that seems to be, that's kind of what drives me, and it's a little bit of my mother and her caring attitude.
Just wanted to make sure I understood. Matthew?
You talked a lot about faith in the green room. Can you talk a little bit about faith in your life?
My mother instilled the religion in me, and that faith and hope, and I try in my years to convey faith in others. I had to have and recognize faith in myself and what I could do and what I could achieve, but I definitely want to try to convey that to others, to have faith in themselves and improve.
What do you mean you had to recognize faith in yourself?
Well, as a part of the maturing process, you kind of start reflecting on your life and how you do things. And in the foundation of my mother and those teachings, it becomes somewhat evident or more explainable.
I assume you're talking about your time outside of work now, right? This doesn't carry over to work, does it?
Oh, everything is about work and everything is about outside work. There's a gray line.
How would faith possibly carry over into work?
Well, you have to have faith in your team that they can perform and they can be perfect and that they can accept discipline and they want to be educated and learn.
Shannon, what else are you thinking?
I'm just curious how you see your background of growing up in Northeast Philly come out today.
You meet a lot of people in Northeast Philly. Northeast Philadelphia had a lot of different cultural aspects to that, and dealing with those individuals and being able to communicate with them really helps in dealing with the variety of staff that you have, the different cultures, the different backgrounds that they have.
And what about your clients?
The same thing. They are very diversified. You have to be able to communicate to them the 30 different personalities across the board. Yeah, and the experiences in my life growing up in the community that I did, and the teachings of my parents and my friends helps you really grow and understand and listen to what our clients' needs are.
It feels to me like you're not the kind of guy that likes taking shortcuts. I mean, you'll do the hard work in order to keep everybody happy all the time. Do you have clients that have been with you for a long time?
Yes, we have clients that have been with us, and we're into third generations.
So my bet is the reason they're sticking with you is because you're delivering the goods as opposed to having a lot of accountants come in and leave. You know, you probably have a pretty long-term staff, and that's one of the reasons you have long-term clients. Am I right about that?
Yes, we have a lot of staff who have been with us for many years. The clients stick with us for third generation because we're able to provide them quality service and in a caring way.
Yeah, but that's the whole point, though. I mean, your nature is really to stick with it and to make things better, and to keep on striving, to keep on. It's like your dad gave that to you, which is nothing's ever good enough. You got to keep on growing and building, right?
Absolutely, you got to keep on working at it.
But yet your mom gave you the empathy and the fact that it really is all the people. Even though you're running an accounting firm, it's people.
Yes, very, very true.
What's the website? What's the website address of Wouch, Maloney and Company?
Website is wm-cpa.com.
Let me have that one more time.
wm-cpa.com.
We've been speaking with John Maloney, including his son Ryan, the managing partner of Wouch, Maloney and Company, along with Shelley Castorino, director of marketing. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment, right after this business spotlight. Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure. Back, you're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce John Campbell, president of Francis Kaufman Architects. John, what is Francis Kaufman Architects? What are you guys doing?
We're an architecture, interior design, and planning firm in Philadelphia, New York, and Orlando.
All right. And where are you from originally?
Scotland.
Scotland. How many brothers and sisters?
I have two elder sisters.
And what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old?
So when I was 8 years old, I ended up going to boarding school because my father's health wasn't that great, and my mother, who was a doctor, was trying to basically do that job and bring up a family.
So you went to boarding school when you were 8 years old. That must have been like frightening or dangerous, or what was that whole experience all about for you?
Well, it was certainly, a certain part of naivety when you started, because really, when you go to boarding school, it's a 24/7 education.
Education about what? What are you talking about?
Well, you've got what we'd consider the standard education, and then, during after hours, you've got sports, you've got to learn how to deal with other people. You learn very quickly about relationships and what you can do, and you create your sort of own boundaries and rules of how you, I guess, deal with people.
So you saw this as opposed to keeping yourself separate or being afraid. You sort of like jumped into the fray there, trying to understand how to handle yourself with everybody. And actually, the words you mentioned in the green room, you were trying to understand each other. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things, the first school I went to, we had a lot of people in those days. Britain had still Commonwealth was strong, and we had a lot of people from different parts of the world. So people had a lot of different diverse backgrounds, and how do we meld that all together and understand and build rapport and relationships?
So
with
you
each
jumped
other.
right into the middle of it as opposed to keeping yourself separate. How's that jumping right into the middle of it have anything to do with your role as president of Francis Kaufman Architects?
Well, I think the most important thing to realize is our business, we're really in the people business. Design just happens to be our medium, and as a result, we're creating spaces for people to perform their best, interact their best, have an experience that enhances their life.
So do you think your ability to understand people starting at that boarding school had anything to do with your success with building this architectural firm?
In the long term, I think the answer is yes.
Shannon?
John, tell us a little bit about your dad and what he was like when you were growing up.
So my dad, from pretty early on, his health wasn't that great, but he was a gentleman in the community that was highly respected. A lot of people considered him really to be like the perfect gentleman.
Tell us more about that.
Just in his manners and how he treated with people and how he talked and listened and was just respected people.
And what did you learn from your father that you carry with you today?
I think it's, listening is one aspect, and just, I think it's really about treat other people the way you want to be treated yourself.
And also, when we were wrapping up in the green room, you mentioned we couldn't do this interview without touching on your grandmother. She clearly had an impact on you. Tell us about that.
So interesting. My grandmother was actually one of the first female architects in the UK, and a pretty amazing lady. When she wanted to go to college, at those days there were no women. And so actually she went to school on the side to start with, and when her father found out that she was doing these classes, he fully enrolled her because of the dedication and determination.
And when you're struggling with something at work, what do you hear your grandmother telling you?
I think she says, perseverance is huge. Just look at the angles, analyze what needs to be done, and just push yourself through it.
So, John, I want to take you back to boarding school in Scotland, and you told us earlier that it wasn't just one. You switched when you were 13 from one school to another. What was that about? My parents wanted me to go to this other school. I didn't know much about it, and it was interesting because the entrance exams to do it happened when I was holiday time in our school, so I actually had to go and stay at the house of the principal of the school. When you say you had to stay at the principal of the new school, you mean, right?
The new school, yes.
And so how long did you stay with him?
It was probably 3 days, and which meant I really had meals with him and his wife every day. And
so how'd that exam go?
Well, the actual exams went pretty terrible.
But you got into the new school.
I think I got into the school, I didn't realize it at the time, but really I was being interviewed by him in these casual settings. And I think just the conversations, you could see I had a certain drive and just who I am, being authentic.
being authentic. What does that have to do with who you are and what you do today?
I think it's hugely important. I think a lot of, in this day and age, people have respect for authentic, and I think people can read through pretty quickly those people who aren't authentic.
So if I said to you, let's go see a project you've worked on that would show the authentic you, that would show the authentic process, what would you take us to and what would you show us?
So one of our aspects, I would actually take you to, it's a few years old, when GSK moved into the Navy Yard, and that was a very transformative project, not only in the city, because it was agile, and the idea you would take people and see, here's a whole new way you can work. It's all about choice. You know, we have very traditional ways in the past of people, but technology has allowed us to work in a totally different manner, and it's about how do you deal with different personalities. You've got introverts, extroverts, and how do you cater for all those array of different people all within the same space and make everybody feel comfortable.
And does that go back to boarding school with kids from all over the Commonwealth?
You know, I think there is a connection. I'd never really thought about it, but I believe you're right.
Tell me more about that.
And so it's about understanding diverse backgrounds, getting people together and working the way through situations. You know, people are fear of change, and I think by just diving in.
And in terms of learning about people, you actually have had a bunch of different summer jobs, haven't you, when you were a kid?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the first one I used to work on a farm out in the Hebrides in a little island off Scotland. And then college, I sliced pork pies all night long. I worked in a fish factory, and one job I worked offshore in the North Sea on an oil production platform.
And what do you bring with you still to this day at work from doing all those different jobs?
I think, you know, many people would say going to boarding school I was privileged. So here was a chance to learn how a variety of people live, and they're all very different, and we all are just as important as each other.
John, it's very clear that giving back is important to you. Where did that come from?
I think it's, you know, I've been lucky. I had a lot of great opportunities that as they've come, I've taken them. And so I feel that it's about giving back and letting other people have the same opportunities.
And how do you do that at FCA Architects?
We sponsor a lot of things, but just recently, my wife and I instituted a travel grant, which employees can put forward, and we select one, and it's a whole new learning experience for them.
And why is travel important to you?
I think it started at boarding school with all these different peoples from different locations. I think it's wonderful to understand how different cultures are, different locations, the smells, the taste, and for obviously an architect, the experiencing the spaces. And I think it enriches our all life's experiences.
What does?
You know, say, for instance, take at the moment, we're very U.S.-centric at the moment here, and I think by understanding multiple cultures, and particularly in a country that actually exists from multiple cultures, I think this is hugely important that we understand others, because we really live in a global world.
And this is one of the special elements that you integrate into your architecture, is understanding different peoples and how architecture makes people feel good and more productive?
Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting. We did a project in Brooklyn recently for a healthcare, and the idea of this process is most people's experience going to the doctor's horrible. Here, the whole intent is you're in straight to the exam room, you're examined, you're out with your prescription in less than an hour. So most people wait more than an hour just to see the doctor.
So the design of the architecture really does influence our experience. What's the website address of this organization known as Francis Kaufman Architects?
It's fcarchitects.com.
We've been speaking with John Campbell, president of Francis Kaufman Architects, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Matthew, can you give us a rundown on who else we've had the opportunity of hanging out with today?
Sure can. It's been a really interesting show this morning. We had Brian Dainis, the founder and CEO of Curotec, Melissa Sherman, the CEO of MOBILion, Then we went to John Maloney, managing partner of Wouch, Maloney and Company, and just now wrapping up, we had John Campbell, the president of Francis Kaufman Architects.
And I'd like to thank my co-hosts Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, and Matthew Shapiro Obermeyer for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Again, thank you for joining us today, and do have a nice day. Bye-bye.